one segment with Larry Krueger just wasn't enough. I don't have my fix yet. I need 30 more minutes. So let's do it. Part 2 with Larry Krueger. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. It's where we're exclusively live. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Folks, they're not booing. No, they're Krueger. Krug. You can follow Larry Krueger on Twitter at SportsLarryK. You got to get onto the Threads tip, Larry. It's blowing up. It's no longer just the ugly stepsister to Twitter. Your presence, it would be welcome there tremendously. You can follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. Larry's program, The Krueg Show, 43,000 subscribers and climbing. Your program's on fire. Folks, you can subscribe to it. It's called The Krueg Show. It's on YouTube. Check it out. I sometimes make appearances there. Larry is making an appearance here right now. I'm super ecstatic. Great to see you again. Larry, let's start with it. We finished up the discussion in part 1. And I've been meaning to talk about this for a while because it's been out there in various social media circles. People are talking about it. James Wiseman's likely going to get waived by the Detroit Pistons. They're likely not going to guarantee that final year of his contract. He will become an unrestricted free agent. Chances are you could get him on the cheap. Veteran minimum. He knows the system. Could be a happy ending to what's been a disappointing story. Drafting the number 2 pick, having the number 2 pick, drafting him, and ended up going nowhere. Are you? Oh, I love hearing dogs. No, that's cool, man. No, we're a dog-friendly program, Larry.
Come here, Penny.
But what are your thoughts, man? I know you didn't seem very thrilled about the idea, but just explain away, please.
I mean, I mean, I don't see it. As far as that's not the kind, he doesn't have this. He wants to be a perimeter shooter, but it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
His hands are terrible. I don't
they
think
were terrible early in his career, though. That was clearly a psychological thing because his first 2 years, or at least his rookie year, he had no problems with his hands. Clearly something happened there in his head. I digress. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that if you say to me, like, okay, they have Trace Jackson Davis. He's going to play the 5. You've got Looney still under contract, so he's still there. So if you're really trying to put somebody with them, I would want somebody who fits. And to me, the guy that I really like is Santi Aldama. In that, I was looking at options for moving, Wiggins. I mean, if you could get Memphis to give you Marcus Smart and Zaire Williams and Santi Aldama for like Wiggins and a first or something like that, I would do that. I like Santi Aldama. He's a big time perimeter shooter. He had a big night this year against Golden State. Didn't he have like 27 against Golden State?
Something like that. Yeah, he's a good player. I like him. I like
rain down threes. He's got a pure set shot from beyond the arc that's big time. Where I know Wiseman loves his outside shot, but it's really not a reliable shot at this point. And I think he's lacking in other areas. I mean, it wouldn't be a disaster. You're no longer investing the second pick in the draft in him. You're now investing just some nominal amount of money. And he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy as far as that. But I just think there's a softness to his whole game that it's just like, I think I would sprint away from. But I mean, as I said, I would love to add a 5 who can flat out shoot it, who spreads the floor. And, you put Santi Aldama on this team, and now he's camped out from beyond the arc. And, when you're a 7-footer and you can shoot the ball, you really got to close out on those guys much more so than a 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" guy who's a dead-eye shooter. And that just creates that much more space. So, to me, the NBA is still very much about pace and space. And I want a space creating big. Lauri Markkanen, Santi Aldama, There's probably 5 or 6 other guys I could probably come up with, but that's the guy I was hoping for.
Well, and again, I agree with you that a stretch big has become a very valuable position in the NBA. We're seeing it right now. Santi Aldama, just to give some people some perspective here, 7 feet tall, weighed 215. At least that's what's listed on his current profile page, but shot 35% from three last year. He averaged just over 10 points a game, 10.7, 5.8 rebounds in only 26 and a half minutes. How sad is it, by the way, that if you're going to move Wiggins, you have to attach a first round pick to him? It's incredible how much his value has plummeted, tanked, where you can't just give him away. You can't. You have to include a first round pick just to get him off your books. It's sad, but that's the reality of the situation.
I've heard Indiana likes Wiggins, and maybe they could make something happen with Indiana, but
take them.
Moving off of Wiggins is probably a must this offseason.
Huge. Absolutely. The only thing with Wiggins I would not be opposed to if you're forced to keep him is if Klay Thompson moves on and you move Wiggins back to his natural position, which is the 2. That's what he played in college. It's what he played at Minnesota. Part of me wonders if at least a part of the reason for his decline is him being forced to play out of position. It worked in 2022 because the Warriors were lucky in the sense that they didn't have to deal with a lot of size. A combination of injuries and just the lack of personnel at that time allowed a player like Wiggins to play the 4 and grab big rebounds and play in the post successfully. That doesn't work. That was a 1-year anomaly, and you can't keep relying on Wiggins to act like he's a power forward. That's not who he is. So I'm not opposed to the idea of Wiggins staying, especially given his 3-point shot was rediscovered this past year, if he's playing his natural 2, because now you got a bigger lineup. You don't have the same defensive liability you had with Klay as a 2. That's just my thoughts. Before we move on, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, it's not about his fit. It's about his lack of fire.
Yeah,
he's a versatile. He's a 6'8" guy who can play the 2, the 3, the 4 in different scenarios. It's not about versatility. He's plenty versatile, and it's not about his skill set. It's about his lack of fire. Yeah. The guy's made $200 million. He's coasting through the twilight of his career. And, it's like he takes time off. He's not dependable. He's got issues off the floor. I just think that it's time to move on. I mean, it's they got what they needed out of him, and I do think there are other teams that would take him. He's healthy. He's not out of shape. He's not old. True. His contract's massive, but there's a ton of bad, massive contracts around the NBA. You could definitely match him up on some deal. To me, I like the idea of trying to get Aldama and Smart, because to me, you solve 2 problems there. Now, Zaire Williams is just kind of a guy who's floated around.
He might be good too, though. He might be good.
I mean, he could be a lot of that replacement 3-point shooting you're talking about.
Yes.
But Marcus Smart is a winner. Marcus Smart is a defender. And, I mean, you already have Draymond, and you've got, Peyton. If you could add Marcus Smart, now you've got some really, outstanding hard-nosed defenders. I'm a big Marcus Smart fan. I think, Boston's missed him. He's just a winning player. So yeah. I think he's one of those, 10 or 12 players in the league that's truly better than his stats. And if I could get Smart and Aldama, I'd throw in a first-round pick and
I would too.
Wiggins.
I would too. And Nick Fensky on the chat. Nick, check your text messages, man. He writes, Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent. Might be too expensive, though. But the Warriors, if they keep things the way they are right now, will have both 2 mid-level exceptions, one in the 12 to 13 million range, the other in the 4 million range. And again, you don't have to spend all that on one player. You can split that up. So hopefully the Warriors will have options for a player like that.
Valanciunas is nice too, but he's a traditional big.
Correct.
There's no outside shooting there. But watching Minnesota, if they're going to stay with Cat and Gobert, and they're standing between you and a trip to the finals, you may want to start thinking, about every and all big men options, because that gives them just a gigantic front.
Absolutely right, man. When we come back, I want to play this soundbite. Draymond Green's been making the media rounds. He was on Shaquille O'Neal's show and said a lot of interesting things. One of those it's a fun topic of discussion, comparing the 2001 Lakers to the 2015 Warriors and how that would come back. Like, what would be the result of those two teams playing?
The opposite. The opposite. You mean?
What do you mean? I don't follow. What do you mean?
You said the 2015 Lakers to the 2001 Warriors.
Reverse that. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me. Yes. I meant the 2001 Lakers, 2015 Warriors. If they played each other, what would happen? Shaquille O'Neal and Draymond Green had that discussion, and we'll talk about it after we give some love to our sponsors for the day. And first up on the agenda is LinkedIn. Look, I don't know what's going on with the economy. Some people say it's fine. Some people say we're in a recession. Whatever is going on, things are damn expensive out there. It's not easy. And if you need to find work, I always tell my students, you got to be on LinkedIn. That's where every job hunter, where a headhunter is, where every job-seeking individual is. And it's also where you can go if you're looking for talent. Let's say, for example, Larry Krueger, host of the Krueg Show. Let's say his empire is ready to add some employees. If you're looking for the right talent for your small business, if you decide to expand your own channel and make it a media empire, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And look, hiring is easy when you can find a large number of quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses with LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. There's a reason why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you find yourself having to turn down the volume with all the shouting on channels like ESPN and Fox Sports, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you can follow Larry Krueger on Twitter. He's free there at SportsLarryK, and his channel is free on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. It's called The Krueg Show. Larry, let's hear from Draymond Green and Shaquille O'Neal. They had a fun discussion. It was a fun podcast in general. I like Shaq. I don't know about you. I love him as a human being, as an individual. Let's hear this discussion, though, where they talked about their two teams. In this case, the 2001 LA Lakers and the 2015 Golden State Warriors. Here we go.
Lakers against your Golden State Warriors. Any of my championship team, any of your championship team, who wins? And the bonus question, who guarding me? Please don't say Andrew Bogut.
I don't think any one player on our team could have guarded you. I do think there were defensive schemes that we could have thrown at you to affect you. One is not letting you get the ball. So we're going to guard you with a guy in front of you, the guy behind you.
They did that.
Yeah, I wasn't on the court, though.
All right, so what you going to do, stand behind me?
I'm standing in front. Ain't no ball getting to you.
What you mean the ball don't get to me?
I'm not 6 feet.
But you ain't 7 feet.
I got 7'3" wingspan.
And I got 9'4" wingspan.
Yeah, but you can't get the ball through me. Andrew Bogut's behind.
Stop
I'm
it.
in the front.
Stop
We're
it.
leaving somebody over there to shoot because you couldn't shoot.
But however, Bogut going to be in foul trouble. Now, who your backup center?
Me.
Draymond, stop.
Me.
Draymond.
Shaq, I don't think I could have guarded you. I'm not saying that.
Shit.
All right, there's a part two here, real fast. Here we go.
To bring your big out of that drop. Man, if you stay back there, I'm going to nail whoever guarding Steph. I'm going to nail whoever guarding Clay, and we're going to dot your eye every play.
Okay, but you know what's going to happen after that? I'm going to tell D-Fish, get up on him, let him drive, and I'm going to lay his little out.
Hey, then we got to fight.
All right, what you got to fight then?
And guess what? You getting thrown out the game and me getting thrown out the game. Who's that going to hurt worse? Your team. Then y'all lose.
So I guess we're not going to fight then. Who guarding Kobe?
Clay.
That's where I feel like he should have said Iguodala instead of Clay. But I thought that was funny. Your reaction, Larry?
Well, it's awesome. I loved it. I mean, that's a great conversation between two of my favorite guys. And normally I don't like that kind of a conversation because it's
Same.
like, it's just kind of like, but from Draymond and Shaq, I loved it. I loved it. And just to think about it too is actually kind of cool. Um, I mean, the Warriors were an awesome offensive team. And but Shaq, that year, in that period was, the combination. He wasn't lean Shaq from Orlando, but he was more skilled than that Shaq that lost the finals. In Orlando, he had a real back to the basket game and
Mm-hmm.
touch and yeah, Bogut would have fouled out. Draymond would have fouled out. I mean, we're talking about the big man and all big man conversations and
Yep.
comparisons with Shaq. So, and then Kobe, Clay would have bothered Kobe a little bit, but Kobe would have been Kobe. So
Yeah,
um,
again, I don't know. I would have said Iguodala in a situation like that instead of unless by
Clay's
Bogut
a
being
great defender, though. Clay was a great defender.
agreed. But Iguodala was better. But I guess I should backtrack because if Bogut's on the floor, Iguodala can't be on the floor. So I guess Clay would be the only option in that situation. So sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, just wanted to add that. It was amazing.
It's interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I think the Warriors probably would have won, but man, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about different eras, different rules, different, um, guys played the way they played because of the rules that were, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to say. It's like, I watched a thing the other day of the 86 Celtics, and a lot of people feel like the 86 Celtics are the greatest team that ever played.
One of
And
them.
yet they never, Bird didn't even shoot threes for the most part. And he was like one of the great 3-point shooters, ever, really. I mean, in some ways, I mean, you could argue, I mean, he hit more dagger threes than almost anybody I can think of, but they took like 3 or 4 a game.
Yeah.
Now teams are taking like 30 or 40 a game. So
I
it's
feel like
hard. It's hard to kind of compare eras, especially when you have if you go back to the 80s and now compare it to now, the freedom of movement that the players have. Steph would have been roughed up in the Michael Jordan era by the Pistons, and I don't know. It's hard to say. The 3-point shot obviously has changed the dynamic of the game dramatically. From the 80s to now. I mean, we're not talking about the 80s, we're talking about 2000s, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there have
Yeah.
been rules changes, the game's officiated differently. I'm a Warrior fan, so I want to say the Warriors would have gotten over, but the Warriors didn't have any big man that could deal with Shaq.
No.
And I remember Shaq going up against Adonal Foyle. Adonal Foyle was
I remember that too.
6'10", 250,
I remember.
260 pounds. Draymond's 6'7", 6'8", 230 pounds. And Adonal Foyle just looked like a fourth grader against Shaq. So Shaq would have just put a knee in Draymond's butt and vaulted him into the, you know what I mean? And Bogut, give me a break. Bogut would have fouled out in 9 minutes. So,
Yeah, I always remember
and
Eric
Kobe at that point
Dampier.
was amazing. So, as much as I love the Warriors and want to say the Warriors, man, I don't know.
Yeah, Portola 45. Literally, I was just starting to say that. Every time I think of the Warriors in those days playing the Shaq, it was always Eric Dampier. That was always the player that jumped out of my brain getting punished. I would agree with you. I think the 2001 Lakers beat the 2015 Warriors. But when you're bringing the 2017 Warriors into the argument with Kevin Durant, that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, I thought that was really entertaining. When we come back,
Durant kind of, it's funny. You said that 2017 team with Durant. The team that I think of when I think of Durant and what impact he had was the 87 Lakers who won it all. And I believe they had Bob McAdoo, who at that point was an older player, but he was just money from the top of the key. I mean, he could hit that face-up shot just repeatedly. And that's kind of what KD offered, is like anytime you needed a bucket, he could just face up in the mid range and knock it down, even with a hand in his face. And when you have an unstoppable mid range scorer, that that gives you an element that's hard to stop. So watching KD get those mid range shots with the Warriors remind me so much of McAdoo. And I forget if it was 84, 87, but
I'm going to guess 84. I'm going to guess 84.
He was a key cog on one of those title teams. And, they had Worthy, they had Magic, they had, maybe even Kareem, but McAdoo was just deadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think McAdoo was more on one of the earlier versions, and then Byron Scott, I think, took his role sort of in the later Lakers teams. But I could talk Lakers, Celtics, 80s basketball all day, every day. It's just
so
a fun
different.
thing.
It was so different. I mean, Magic drove down the middle of the lane and would make like no look passes to people that were like 3 feet away from him.
He was a
who
wizard.
would get layups or dunks. Now they don't even run the break the same way. It's not, you would never have a no look pass to somebody who's like 2 feet away from you for the most part. It was like a staple of what he did. I don't know. It's such a, the court's the same, but everything else is different.
And real fast in the chat, Adrian Gutierrez brings up DeMar DeRozan. The Warriors have no chance for him. He's going to be commanding $40+ million a year. Nice thought. I think
Sure,
any
he wants
team
to
would
be
love
in California, but he probably wants to be in Southern California.
Yeah, and he wants another huge payday, and the Warriors just can't do that. When we come back, I wanted, for some reason, I'm bizarrely obsessed with the fact that the Western Conference Finals features 2 teams with drama-filled ownership situations. I want to quickly talk with you about that. And then Draymond, I'm going to play at least one more clip because he said a lot of fascinating, interesting things. So we'll touch on that and so much more after we give some love to our final sponsor of the afternoon. That's one more time, BetterHelp. As we mentioned them in part 1, I'll mention them again. Mental health is important. It's a good thing to focus on, especially if you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling depression, if you feel off. Go get the help you need. And one of the many, many positives of BetterHelp is the fact that they're saving you time and they're saving you money. Gas ain't cheap, especially these days. You don't have to spend a penny on gas with BetterHelp. You don't have to change your clothes. You don't have to sit in traffic or sacrifice the most valuable commodity we all have as human beings on this planet, time. You can save that from the comfort of your home. Stay in your cozies. Speak to your therapist virtually. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba and get on your way to being your best self and get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, one final segment with the host of the Krueg Show. Make sure you subscribe to the Krueg Show and follow Larry Krueger on Twitter at SportsLarryK. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For the everydayers, follow me on Threads at Dog Wild and follow the program on Threads as well at Locked On Warriors for updates about the program all summer long. We're going to have guests who bring the incredible insights and entertainment value that Larry Krueger brings to the program today. Larry, let's hear from Draymond Green. And the reason why I particularly love this subject matter is because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw you post something on social media about Mike Malone, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, and the way he treated a reporter. I mean, the man clearly got into his feelings. He was just definitely clearly unhappy about the fact that the Nuggets lost, but he acted petulant. There was no good reason for him to go after that reporter for simply asking a question about how he's feeling after your team, the defending world champions, gets eliminated. So the topic in this case that Draymond brought up with Shaquille O'Neal was Mike Malone's player Jamal Murray. And in this case, the fact that he got away with throwing a heat pack on the court in the middle of action and how there is potentially a double standard. Let's listen to Shaquille O'Neal and Draymond Green talk about that.
Jamal Murray gets upset, throws a towel on the court. Then he gets upset, he throws a heating pack on the court. The rulings, we fine you $100,000. It's okay. What if that was Draymond Green?
I would have got suspended for the rest of the playoffs, for sure. I tried to hit Brian, got suspended from Game 5 of the finals.
You tried to hit him?
Damn right I tried to hit him. You step over, I'm a grown man, you don't step over my shoulder. A lot of space on the basketball court. I don't take up that much space. You don't need to go over my shoulder. You go over my shoulder, you're disrespecting me as a man. And so I got suspended for trying to make contact. And you throw a heating pack on the court and that's okay. If somebody step on that heating pack and get hurt, then is it a bigger deal or is it not? Don't tell me, oh, we don't want to affect the outcome of the game because the outcome of an NBA Finals was affected. We want the players to determine what's happening on the court and the outcome, unless that rule changed. The problem that I have oftentimes with the suspensions and different things is like, you don't know what it is. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's in between. It just kind of moves. There is no set, you do this, you get this. You do that, you get this. It's all over the place. And so when I saw that, and then people like, oh, they did the right thing because they didn't want to affect the outcome. I am an NBA Finals MVP short because an outcome was affected. I think it was.
So, and I thought more interesting than the fact that Draymond Green basically called out the arbitrary manner of how they punish players. There is a lack of specific guidelines for a lot of this. But I thought it was more interesting that Draymond admitted that he tried to hit LeBron James. I've never heard him that candid about that specific incident, which led to him being suspended for Game 5. Your thoughts, Larry? I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, you're bringing up topics that I just to this day bother me. If we go and play pickup ball in the Panhandle, in the city, and you step over me the way that LeBron stepped over Draymond, I'm going to do the exact same thing to you that Draymond did to LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Just that kind of reciprocal get off me.
Yep.
Right. And that's all Draymond did. So the fact that he was suspended there was criminal. To me, there will forever be an asterisk next to that series. I guess you could argue that Draymond, should have controlled himself better. Draymond's got to take some responsibility because that was like the 15th thing that happened. And so there's points and this and that led to the suspension. So all of the prior things that he did, kicking guys and this and that, all played a factor in the suspension, not just that. That was just the capper. But I mean, that is just, to me, it's like anything else. If somebody, we see it all the time. If somebody pushes somebody, even forget sports, just talk about in life. All of a sudden you're standing in Safeway and somebody pushes somebody. And then the person who gets pushed pushes the person back. Who's at fault? It's like,
yeah,
that's a reciprocal response. Pushing somebody back to them pushing you is a reciprocal response. Now, if you're standing in Safeway and person A pushes person B and person B rips out a buck knife out of their back pocket and shoves it in the guy's chest, that's not a reciprocal response to being pushed, and that person should be convicted of a crime. You know what I mean? So we're talking about what Draymond did to LeBron was only in the category of a reciprocal response to what happened in that situation, and there's no way they should have been suspended.
Agreed.
And for them to interfere in the series and take a guy off the floor, that was criminal, and then that was wrong, and it cost the Warriors a series, and I just can't stand it. As far as Jamal Murray, it's like, control yourself, man.
Yeah.
It's like, what happens if all of a sudden we have a Super Bowl and Brock Purdy hits Deebo Samuel and he's running down the sidelines for the game-winning touchdown in overtime, but somebody comes off the Chiefs sideline and trips him? Well, it's got to be a major. I don't know what that. It's unprecedented, right? It's like the boundaries of the court and the boundaries of the field mean so much that
absolutely,
if you go against those norms, the penalties should be severe. If you're throwing stuff onto the playing court while you're not playing, that you should be ejected minimum, probably suspended for the next game minimum. If they kick that person out of the series, I would be okay with it, because you're crossing the boundaries of, and you're doing a non-basketball action. It's kind of like when you watched that NHL thing a few years ago with that guy Bertuzzi who drove the guy's head into the ice.
Yes.
Okay, was it violence involved around the context of an NHL game? Yes. But was it in any way a part of the game? No. It was literally a brutal, battery, attack, unprecedented in the midst of the context of an NHL arena. So it wasn't, it has to go beyond fouls and penalties and into something far more severe. If you run from out of bounds on the playing field, I mean, you just can't do it. I
Yeah.
mean, could you imagine if there was a World Series and some guy is on second base and somebody hits a base hit to center field and the guy's rounding third and some guy comes out of the visiting dugout and tackles the guy on his way home? It's like, what should be the penalty there? The guy should be almost kicked out of the sport. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, no,
it's
I agree. Jamal Murray,
intentional.
I thought Jamal Murray got away with that was a ridiculously light punishment. I know 100
Yeah.
grand's a lot of money, but to not get suspended, I think Draymond has a point with the double standard.
It totally does.
I want to end the show on this note again. It has nothing to do with the Warriors, but I think it's fascinating just in the sense that you have all these uber rich people doing weird things and having legal fights and it's literally involving both Western Conference Finals teams. On one hand, and maybe this is the only topic we have time for, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I always thought this was crazy from the beginning. I had the Locked On Timberwolves host on Ben on this show a year or so ago, and I brought this up with him, and he didn't think there was going to be any drama associated with this. But of course there is. And this is Alex Rodriguez and his business partner, Lori. I forgot the guy's first name, Mark Lori. And they basically were supposed to buy the Timberwolves. It was going to be like this payment process. But from the time they agreed to the deal, and it was for, I think, $1.5 billion, to now, the value of the Timberwolves has gone up. The Timberwolves are a much better team. They're actually good. And now you have the current owner, Glenn Taylor. Side note, the dude's a total dog with fleas. I don't know if you folks remember those protests a couple years ago where people were accusing Glenn Taylor of basically being an animal abuser. He is. He's one of these corporate farmers who keeps like millions of chickens or thousands or whatever it is cooped up with no freedoms. And that's why people were protesting. The point is, Glenn Taylor is now backtracking. He doesn't want to sell the team to Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lori, yet A-Rod is sitting there courtside during these games, acting like he's the owner. The latest news update is that they went to a mediator, did not resolve it. It's now going to go to arbitration. I think it's just fascinating stuff. Your thoughts, Larry, as we wrap it up.
Well, I mean, it's just, it speaks to the volatility of the value of these franchises, and either they had an agreement and it's in writing, or they didn't have an agreement and it's not in writing. If they have no agreement, then Taylor's in the right. If they have an agreement, then A-Rod's in the right. It really just comes down to, do they have a signed agreement for the sale of the franchise, and whether it's complete or not. If they have a signed agreement, then Taylor's probably in the right. If they don't have that agreement, then maybe A-Rod's in the right. But this is what happens when you have incredibly volatile, valuation of these franchises, and making the playoffs and showing that you're a title contender suddenly vaults the value of your franchise up by, forget tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars.
Maybe billions, maybe even
Yeah.
billions. Yeah.
I mean, does it work the other way? I mean, the Warriors were worth a ridiculous amount of money when they've won the title. Or do you start to lose value as you move on and you're no longer a title contender? I mean, I don't know exactly, the patterns of the volatility, but we're talking about, we're talking about very expensive assets.
Uh-huh.
And when you're talking about very expensive assets, there's always potential that they can go up by astronomical dollars, but it really is as simple as, do they have a written agreement?
Yeah. And it's just the fascinating part to me is seeing A-Rod there, because these two are now in a battle, and yet they're just have to mingle alongside each other. I just think it's awesome stuff. And then Mark Cuban sells his team to Sheldon Adelson, yet he's still managing the team. That's a whole other bizarre thing. That's the NBA for you. Larry, I love you, man. Again, people can follow you on Twitter at SportsLarryK. Subscribe to the Krueg Show. Thank you. And thank you to everyone. This was a fun hour, man. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for the time you gave to me today into this program. Love you, Larry. Love you, everyone.
Love you too, bro. Have a good one.
You too, brother. Bye-bye.